My mother tapped a silver spoon against her crystal glass and announced to 60 of Nashville's wealthiest residents that it was a shame I harbored so much jealousy toward my younger sister. She stood on our manicured lawn, gesturing to a pristine alpine white BMW, and then pointed a perfectly manicured finger toward my 5-year-old sedan parked out on the street. She told the crowd of country club board members that if I just applied myself, if I had a fraction of Savannah's hustle, I would not have to drive such a tragic beater. What the women sipping sweet tea and murmuring in agreement did not know was that Savannah had a credit score hovering in the high fives. They did not know that 8 months ago I sat in a dealership finance office and signed my name on the loan to stop Savannah from crying. And they certainly did not know that the $1,200 payment for that status symbol came directly out of my checking account on the first of every month. I let my mother enjoy her applause. I let her build a pedestal out of my money. Because when the tow truck finally backed into my sister's driveway a few weeks later, in front of those exact same neighbors, the fall was going to be spectacular. Welcome to Morning Revenge, where the family members who quietly financed the illusion finally stop paying the bill. If you have ever been the invisible safety net for a family that treats you like a disappointment, you will feel this story in your bones. Tell me your age in the comments and let me know where you are watching from. And make sure to subscribe. My name is Fiona William, and I am 29 years old. I am a senior credit portfolio manager for a regional bank. I spend 40 hours a week dissecting corporate risk, analyzing debt-to-income ratios, and forecasting defaults. I deal in cold numbers. My mother, Patricia, deals in optics. In Belmead, Tennessee, optics are the only currency that matters. The humidity that afternoon felt heavy enough to drown in. I stood at the edge of the patio holding a glass of iced water. Condensation dripped down my wrist, pooling in the palm of my hand. Patricia glided across the grass in a floral linen sundress, her wedge heels never sinking into the dirt. She operated this neighborhood barbecue like a military campaign, ensuring every local surgeon and real estate developer noticed the monogrammed napkins and the imported brisket. She stopped next to me, the scent of her expensive jasmine perfume layered over the smell of charcoal. "Fiona, darling," she said, pitching her voice so the group of women standing 3 feet away could hear every syllable. "I was worried your little car finally gave out on the interstate. We were about to send Chase to come get you." Chase was Savannah's fiancé. He called himself an entrepreneur. I called him unemployed. "It runs fine, Mom," I said. "Just heavy traffic." Patricia sighed, placing a hand on my forearm, her acrylic nails pressed into my skin just enough to leave red half-moons. "We just worry, especially when you see how well your sister is doing right now." She looked past me to the center of the driveway. Savannah stood leaning against the driver's side door of the BMW. She wore a designer sundress, tossing her blonde hair and laughing at a joke told by a junior partner from a local law firm. The sunlight caught the hood of the car, making it shine like a beacon of new money. "Savannah has so much drive," Patricia continued, her voice swelling with practiced Southern pride. "That car is a testament to her ambition. It takes real vision to secure a luxury vehicle at 25. I just wish you would let her mentor you, Fiona. It breaks my heart to see you nursing this quiet jealousy when you could be learning from her success." The women nearby offered tight, sympathetic smiles. One of them adjusted her pearl necklace and murmured something about how hard it is for older siblings to watch the younger ones thrive. I took a slow breath. My chest tightened, but I did not let the frustration reach my face. I looked at Savannah. I remembered the Tuesday evening 8 months ago when she called me sobbing from the dealership lobby. The finance manager had run her credit and laughed her out of the chair. Patricia had called me 10 minutes later, weaponizing her guilt, telling me it was an emergency investment in Savannah's budding real estate career. She promised Savannah would make every payment. Savannah had not made a single payment. When the first delinquency notice threatened my own credit tier, I set up a silent auto draft. I absorbed the cost to keep the peace. I bought my own public degradation for $1,200 a month. I looked back at my mother. Her smile was tight, expectant, waiting for me to lower my head and accept my place in the shadow of Savannah's rented glory. "You are right, Mom," I said. My voice came out flat, stripped of any warmth. It really is fascinating what a person can drive when the right foundation is built. Patricia blinked. The smile faltered on her lips as she tried to decode the phrasing. She opened her mouth to speak, but I did not wait for the counterattack. I turned and walked toward the quiet shade of the wraparound porch. I reached into my leather clutch and pulled out my phone. I ignored the unread emails from my risk assessment team. Instead, I opened my banking application. The screen glowed against the shadows of the porch. I navigated to the scheduled transfers menu. There it was, the upcoming auto draft for the auto loan, scheduled to leave my account on Tuesday morning. I stared at the digital toggle button. My thumb hovered over the glass. For 8 months, I had prioritized their comfort over my own respect. I pressed the screen. The toggle slid from green to gray. Autopay canceled. I did not stop there. I opened the loan profile and updated the mailing address, routing all future delinquency notices away from my inbox and directly to Savannah's luxury apartment complex. The trap was set. The clock was ticking. The leather-wrapped steering wheel of my sedan felt hot under my palms as I navigated away from the manicured lawns of Belle Meade. My air conditioning took a solid 10 minutes to stop blowing warm air, a stark contrast to the climate-controlled perfection I had just left behind. In the rearview mirror, the iron gates of my parents' neighborhood shrank into the distance. My pulse hummed a slow, steady rhythm in my ears. I did not feel the familiar crushing weight of familial inadequacy. For the first time in my life, I felt the cold, sharp edge of liberation. Every Monday morning, I take the elevator to the 22nd floor of a downtown high-rise. I sit behind a mahogany desk and review commercial credit portfolios. I dissect risk for a living. If a seasoned corporate developer brings me a balance sheet carrying a negative debt service coverage ratio, I deny their funding without a second thought. I look confident men in bespoke suits right in the eye and tell them their financial foundation is too fragile for our capital. I am trained to spot a bad investment from 3 zip codes away. I strip away the promises, ignore the firm handshakes, and look only at the math. The math never lies. Yet when it came to my own blood, I had allowed Patricia to bypass every logical safeguard I possessed. 8 months ago, I was sitting in a board meeting when my cell phone vibrated with 4 consecutive urgent text messages from my mother. When I stepped out into the hallway to call her back, I was met with a chorus of manufactured panic. Savannah was sitting in a luxury dealership finance office, sobbing over a rejected application. Her credit score was a ghost town of late credit card payments and unpaid boutique store charges. Patricia had cornered me through the receiver. Savannah just passed her real estate exam. Fiona, my mother, had pleaded, her voice thick with that weaponized Southern guilt. She has a showing with a high-end client in Brentwood this weekend. She cannot pull up to a multi-million-dollar listing in that awful compact car of hers. Clients buy the agent before they buy the house. This is an emergency investment in her brand. She just needs your Tier 1 credit score to secure the loan. She will make the payments from her commission checks. I promise you, Fiona. Do not stand in the way of your sister's future. I had relented. Against every professional instinct, I drove to the dealership on my lunch break and signed a binding contract for a $65,000 depreciating asset. I did it because I wanted to believe, just for a moment, that being the reliable daughter would finally earn me a fraction of the pride Patricia showered on Savannah. The delusion lasted exactly 30 days. I remember the exact moment the trap snapped shut. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I was reviewing a quarterly risk report when an automated email landed in my personal inbox. First payment missed, account past due. My pristine credit score, the foundation of my entire professional reputation, took an immediate hit. I dialed Savannah's number. It went straight to voicemail. I dialed Patricia. My mother answered with a heavy, irritated sigh, as if I had interrupted her afternoon tea to complain about the weather. "Oh, Fiona," she had said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Savannah is just getting her feet under her. Real estate takes time to generate cash flow. Just cover the note this month. You have plenty of cushion in your accounts. We are a family. We do not keep score over pennies." Pennies. It was $1,200. Instead of fighting, instead of dragging the vehicle back to the lot and enduring a month of psychological warfare from my mother, I took the path of least resistance. I logged into the lender portal and set up a silent auto draft from my primary checking account. I bought my own peace. I paid a premium to keep the family ecosystem functioning. Now sitting in the humid cabin of my car at a red light, I realized that my financial enabling had purchased nothing but my own public degradation. I was not the valued safety net. I was the silent sponsor of a stage play where I was cast as the envious failure. The traffic light turned green. I pressed the accelerator, merging onto the highway. By the time I pulled into the driveway of my modest townhouse, the adrenaline had crystallized into strategy. I unlocked my front door, dropped my keys onto the kitchen counter, and walked straight to my home office. The cancellation on my mobile app was just the preliminary strike. I needed to ensure the fallout was surgically directed. I opened my laptop. The screen illuminated the dim room. I typed in the web address for the luxury auto lender and logged into the active loan portal. The dashboard displayed the gleaming white vehicle, a high-definition rendering of the exact car currently parked on my parents' driveway. The balance stared back at me, a heavy 5-figure sum. I navigated to the profile settings. The first step was the billing address. I deleted my townhouse address. In its place, I typed in the exact street number, unit number, and zip code for Savannah's luxury downtown apartment complex. I moved to the phone directory. I erased my mobile number. I input Savannah's digits, checking them twice for accuracy. Finally, I replaced my email address with hers. I clicked save. The portal refreshed. Profile updated successfully. From this moment forward, every automated warning, every red letter notice, every increasingly urgent phone call from the collections department would bypass me entirely. The bank would hunt the driver, not the ghost co-signer who just vanished from the digital ledger. I closed the laptop. The fan whirred softly in the quiet room. A minor alert chimed from my phone on the desk. It was an Instagram notification. Savannah had just posted a photo from the barbecue. She was posing on the hood of the BMW holding a glass of champagne. The caption read, "Hustle until your haters ask if you are hiring." I stared at the glowing image. Savannah's fiancé, Chase, had already commented with a row of fire emojis. Chase was a man who spent his days pitching phantom startup ideas to anyone who would listen, living entirely off Savannah's illusion of wealth. He was the kind of man who borrowed money to buy tailored suits while dodging calls from his cell phone provider. I felt a new, distinct layer of curiosity forming in my mind regarding Chase. If Savannah's entire financial existence was a house of cards financed by my checking account, what exactly was Chase building his entrepreneurial empire on? I sat back in my desk chair, the leather creaking under my weight. I opened a new browser tab. It was time to run a quiet, perfectly legal background check on my future brother-in-law. 30 days evaporated into the humid Tennessee summer. August arrived, bringing with it a suffocating heat that trapped the city of Nashville under a thick atmospheric blanket. For a month, I maintained a flawless facade of familial distance. I declined Sunday dinner invitations, citing heavy corporate audits at the commercial bank. I ignored the group chat notifications detailing wedding venue selections and floral arrangements. I was waiting for a very specific digital event to occur. On the morning of the 14th, I sat at my mahogany desk on the 22nd floor of the commercial lending department, holding a ceramic mug of black coffee. My dual monitors glowed with spreadsheets outlining corporate liabilities. But nestled in the corner of the right screen was a minimized browser window containing my personal credit monitoring dashboard. The grace period for the luxury auto loan expired at exactly midnight. I refreshed the page. The loading icon spun for 2 seconds, before rendering the updated interface. The green status indicator adjacent to the primary trade line vanished. In its place, a stark orange warning icon materialized. Account past due. Amount owed $1,150. There were no explosive arguments, no dramatic confrontations in a country club dining room. The tension built through the terrifying silence of compounding daily interest. The bank had issued their first algorithmic penalty. A late fee was officially assessed to the principal balance. My desk phone remained silent, but my mobile device vibrated against the polished wood. I expected an automated alert from the creditor, but the notification banner displayed an Instagram mention. I tapped the screen. Savannah had uploaded a staged, candid photograph of herself and Chase sitting at a high-end brunch spot in the Gulch. Chase wore a tailored linen suit that looked suspiciously new, holding a mimosa up to the camera lens. Chase liked to curate an aesthetic of effortless entrepreneurial success. He referred to himself as a venture architect. In reality, he spent his mornings attending networking breakfasts and his afternoons designing business cards for startups that never filed actual articles of incorporation. My mother adored him because he possessed the exact brand of superficial charm required to navigate the Belmead social circuit. I scrolled down to read the caption. Building empires requires surrounding yourself with people who understand the grind. So blessed to have a partner who never settles for mediocrity. Beneath the caption, Chase had pinned his own comment to the top of the thread. He tagged my profile handle directly. Some people are content punching a corporate clock and driving sensible sedans forever. We are aiming for a different tax bracket entirely. Keep grinding, babe. A sharp breath caught in my throat. The audacity of the comment was breathtaking. He was mocking my lack of hustle while wearing clothes purchased with a credit card my sister paid for, using money she technically stole from my uncompensated auto loan payments. I did not type out a heated reply. I did not block him. Emotion is a liability in debt collection. Instead, I set my phone down and turned my full attention to my left monitor. I opened a fresh tab connected to the state commercial registry. As a senior credit portfolio manager, I possess direct access to public financial filings, lien records, and corporate tax statuses. If Chase wanted to publicly audit my ambition, I decided it was only fair to professionally audit his empire. I typed his full legal name into the query bar. The database chugged for a fraction of a second before generating a list of registered entities. Only one limited liability company appeared under his signature, Apex Synergy Holdings. I clicked the hyperlink, pulling the operational history. The screen flooded with data, and a cold smile stretched across my face. Apex Synergy Holdings was a ghost ship. The entity had filed zero revenue for 3 consecutive fiscal years. But the absence of income was not the most damning revelation. I scrolled down to the liabilities section. A bright red flag denoted a series of active judgments. 3 different vendors had secured court-ordered liens against the company for unpaid invoices related to marketing services and web design. Furthermore, the State Franchise Tax Board had officially suspended the business license 6 months prior for failure to pay the minimum annual corporate tax. Chase was not merely unemployed. He was legally and financially bankrupt, operating a defunct shell company while mocking my steady paycheck on a public forum. I leaned back in my chair, the leather squeaking softly in the quiet office. A profound, chilling realization washed over me. My parents were facing a hidden mountain of consumer debt to maintain their country club membership. Savannah was drowning in cosmetic expenses while defaulting on a premium vehicle, and her future husband was a walking financial toxic asset. My family was constructing a localized dynasty of prestige upon a foundation of absolute financial ruin. And up until 30 days ago, I had been the sole load-bearing pillar keeping the entire structure from collapsing into the dirt. My mobile device vibrated again. This time, the incoming caller ID displayed a toll-free number originating from a banking call center in Delaware. The auto lender. I swiped the green icon to accept the call and lifted the device to my ear. I did not say hello. This is an automated message from the Financial Recovery Division. A robotic female voice stated, stripped of all human empathy. This call is regarding a past due balance on a vehicle loan ending in 4009. Please remain on the line to be connected with a recovery specialist to process your payment. I listened to the electronic hum of the hold music for 3 seconds, memorizing the sound of impending consequences. Then I tapped the red disconnect button. I opened my banking application one final time. Although I had canceled the auto draft on the day of the barbecue, my checking account numbers were still technically saved in the payment history module. I navigated to the external linked accounts menu. I highlighted the routing number attached to the luxury lender. I hit delete. A confirmation window popped up, warning me that removing the funding source would require manual entry for all future transactions. I clicked confirm. The digital cord severed. I was permanently detached from the lending profile. The bank had no way to touch my liquidity, no matter how desperate they became. I checked my phone once more before returning to my commercial portfolios. Savannah had updated her social media story. A brief video clipped onto the screen showing the interior courtyard of a high-end day spa located in the wealthy suburbs of Brentwood. The camera panned across a sparkling infinity pool before zooming in on the parking lot. The alpine white BMW sat gleaming in a reserved VIP space, soaking up the afternoon sun. Savannah added a text overlay that read, "Midweek reset, because self-care is not a luxury, it is a necessity." She was sipping cucumber water in a plush white robe, entirely oblivious to the gears grinding into motion just miles away. She did not know that the grace period was dead. She did not know that the algorithmic system had just moved her file from the billing department to the collections floor. The financial crosshairs were actively locking onto her pristine leather seats, and she was busy choosing a filter. 60 days past due. The financial machinery of consequence grinds forward silently before it finally bites. By the second month of delinquency, the creditor shifts tactics. I knew the internal processes well. The automated courtesy calls transition into persistent human outreach. Collection agents trained to hunt down outstanding debt were undoubtedly leaving voicemails on Savannah's phone. Thick envelopes stamped with urgent red lettering were likely accumulating in the polished brass mailbox of her luxury building. Yet Savannah existed in a state of curated, blissful ignorance. Growing up, Patricia always ensured I absorbed the administrative friction of my sister's life. If Savannah missed a deadline, I filed the extension. If she overdrew an account, I transferred the funds. Savannah simply assumed the strange phone calls were telemarketers, and the formal letters were junk mail. She operated under the deeply flawed assumption that her safety net was still firmly secured beneath her. The illusion of her security was on full display at the Belmead Country Club's summer gala. The event was the crown jewel of the local social calendar. I arrived wearing a modest, tailored navy column dress, intending to observe rather than participate. The grand ballroom smelled of roasted tenderloin floor wax and the overwhelming scent of freesia centerpieces. A string quartet played near the terrace doors, their music barely cutting through the dense hum of wealthy networking. For my mother, this country club was a temple. She had dedicated decades of her life to climbing its social ladder, trading genuine familial warmth for the right to sit at a premium table near the windows. She engineered every conversation tonight to center around Savannah's supposed triumphs. Savannah paraded across the Persian rugs in a floor-length emerald silk gown. She looked like a magazine editorial come to life. Older couples stopped her to offer congratulations on her budding real estate empire. They specifically praised the pristine vehicle sitting in the VIP valet circle right outside the main entrance. Chase stood by her side, nodding graciously, playing the part of the successful venture architect supporting his ambitious fiancée. They projected an image of flawless prosperity, a beautiful portrait painted entirely with stolen pigment. I sat quietly at our designated table, sipping sparkling water and watching the performance. The dinner service concluded with a round of polite applause for the club president. Waiters in crisp white uniforms moved seamlessly through the room, clearing bone china dessert plates. Patricia sat to my right, practically vibrating with satisfaction. She had successfully cemented Savannah's status among the Nashville elite for another season. A senior waiter approached our table carrying a slim, black leather folio. He placed it discreetly next to Patricia's crystal water goblet. It was the catering surcharge. Patricia had intentionally expanded our seating arrangement to include 3 influential real estate brokers, ignoring the standard guest limit. The additional cost was steep. Patricia did not open the booklet. She kept her eyes focused on a distant conversation across the room. Without missing a beat, she placed her manicured fingertips on the smooth black leather and slid it across the white linen tablecloth. It stopped directly in front of my plate. "You can handle this one, Fiona," she said, her tone bright and airy, designed to sound like a casual favor between equals. "It is the least you could do to contribute tonight. After all, you do not have a steep car note to worry about every month. You have all that extra disposable income sitting around." A few nearby guests turned their heads, offering tight, amused smiles. Patricia was playing to her audience again. She wanted to showcase my supposed role as the reliable, albeit unglamorous, financial supporter of the family. It was a calculated move to elevate Savannah's expensive aesthetic by contrasting it against my practical frugality. The old version of me would have opened the leather flap, pulled out a premium rewards card, and swallowed the $2,500 charge just to avoid a scene. The old version of me feared the quiet judgment of the Belmead elite. I did not touch the folio. I set my water glass down. The ice clinked softly against the crystal rim. I placed my index finger on the edge of the leather binding and applied a slow, steady pressure. I slid the booklet back across the pristine white tablecloth until it rested right next to Patricia's plate. "I am not paying for your guests, Mom," I said. My voice was low, carrying no anger, only an immovable boundary. "I suggest you use that platinum card you always boast about." The air at the table froze. The nearby guests suddenly found their half-empty wine glasses fascinating, averting their eyes to avoid the awkwardness. Patricia's bright, performative smile shattered. The Southern Belle mask slipped, revealing the raw, venomous entitlement underneath. Her eyes narrowed into dark slits, boring into my face, as she tried to comprehend the public defiance. She was accustomed to silent compliance. This calm rejection in front of her peers was a direct strike against her constructed reality. "You are embarrassing yourself," she hissed under her breath, leaning in close so only I could hear the poison in her voice. "Do not cause a scene right now. I am simply declining an invitation to purchase your dinner," I replied, keeping my posture perfectly straight. "There is no scene unless you choose to create one." I did not wait for her counterattack. I picked up my clutch, stood up from the table, and smoothed the front of my dress. I offered a polite nod to the stunned guests sitting across from us. "Enjoy the rest of your evening." I walked out of the ballroom, leaving my mother staring at the unpaid bill. The heavy oak doors closed behind me, muffling the sound of the string quartet. I navigated through the marble lobby and stepped out into the humid night air. I requested a rideshare on my phone, bypassing the valet stand where the luxury vehicles were staged. A few minutes later, my modest economy ride pulled up to the curb. I climbed into the back seat and rolled down the window, letting the warm summer breeze hit my face. As the driver slowly navigated the winding exit of the country club, I looked back toward the grand entrance. The valet attendants were jogging across the illuminated pavement. One of them pulled the shining alpine white vehicle up to the front steps. Savannah and Chase emerged from the lobby. Savannah handed the attendant a small tip, her emerald gown catching the light as she slid into the driver's seat. She looked triumphant, a queen claiming her throne. She had no idea the throne was built on quicksand. My phone vibrated in my hand. It was not a message from my mother demanding an apology. It was an encrypted alert from my financial monitoring software. I opened the notification. The digital text rendered on the screen in stark, unforgiving terms. Account status updated. Default confirmed. 60 days past due. Asset recovery process initiated. The internal gears of the banking system had locked into place. The automated grace periods were exhausted. The courtesy calls were over. The lender had officially transferred the title status to their repossession division. I watched the taillights of my sister's vehicle fade into the distance, turning onto the main thoroughfare. The countdown clock had expired. The next knock on her door would not be a delivery driver or a friendly neighbor. It would be an agent holding a metal hook and a legally binding tow order. The facade was about to crumble. The morning sunlight filtering through the blinds of my townhouse felt unnaturally sharp. I sat at my dining table, holding a mug of black coffee, the bitter taste grounding me after the surreal theater of the country club gala. Leaving my mother to pay the catering surcharge was a tactical victory, but it also served as a stark reminder. Patricia viewed my wallet as an extension of her own purse. I needed to ensure every digital bridge between my finances and my family was burned to ash. Financial independence requires constant vigilance. I opened my laptop and began a meticulous audit of my personal ledgers. I reviewed my primary checking, my retirement portfolios, and my high-yield savings. The numbers were secure. The passwords were changed. I was about to close the browser when a dormant memory surfaced. When I was 16, working double shifts at a local law firm filing documents all summer, my father had walked me into a regional bank branch. Thomas was a man of quiet compromises. He owned a boutique insurance agency that had been struggling for a decade, a reality he carefully obscured behind tailored golf apparel and country club dues. He survived by bending to Patricia's will, purchasing his peace by sacrificing his oldest daughter. That day at the bank, he insisted on opening a joint emergency fund for me. He claimed it was a protective measure, a way to guide my financial literacy. For 10 years, I had funneled a portion of every bonus, every tax refund, and every spare paycheck into that legacy ledger. It held $15,000. It was my early career safety net, meant only for genuine catastrophes. I had not checked the balance in 6 months. I navigated to the secondary institution's web portal and typed in the old credentials. The interface loaded slowly. My eyes tracked across the screen, searching for the familiar 5-figure sum. Available balance, $0.00. I stopped breathing. The quiet hum of the refrigerator amplified in the silent kitchen. A distinct, icy numbness started in my chest and radiated down to my fingertips. The numbers stared back at me, stark and undeniable. My safety net was gone. I did not panic. Panic is a luxury for amateurs. I am a credit portfolio manager. I track missing capital for a living. I clicked on the transaction history tab, my eyes scanning the rows of data. The withdrawal did not happen in one lump sum. It was extracted via 3 precise wire transfers executed over the past 45 days. The banking authorizations required a dual signature or a primary account holder override. Thomas was the primary account holder. He had authorized the extraction. I pulled the digital receipts, zeroing in on the receiving routing codes. A standard consumer would see random strings of digits. I saw a map. I opened a new tab, accessing a commercial database reserved for financial industry professionals. I ran the routing sequence through the query bar. The beneficiary institution was a regional corporate bank. The registered merchant name populated on my screen in bold black text. The Magnolia Estate. It was not a medical facility. It was not a mortgage lender saving my parents' house from foreclosure. The Magnolia Estate was a premier high society event venue located on a sprawling antebellum plantation outside the city. It was the exact venue Savannah had been boasting about securing for her upcoming nuptials. My father had not merely borrowed money to keep the lights on at his failing insurance agency. He had actively cannibalized my teenage labor, my early career sacrifices, and my personal security to fund a deposit for Savannah's vanity project. They had stolen my past to finance her illusion. The remaining shreds of guilt I carried regarding the impending vehicle repossession evaporated instantly. The moral ledger was wiped clean. I felt a profound, heavy grief try to rise in my throat, mourning the parents I thought I had. But I swallowed it down. I replaced the sorrow with the cold, unforgiving clarity of a forensic auditor. I stood up, walked into my home office, and loaded fresh paper into the printer tray. I hit print on the wire transfer logs. I printed the time-stamped digital receipts. I printed the commercial database verification, linking the routing numbers to the Magnolia estate. I gathered the warm sheets of paper, aligned their edges perfectly, and placed them inside a pristine manila folder. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, I was sitting in a high-backed leather chair inside a private legal office overlooking downtown Nashville. Declan sat across the polished walnut desk. He was a ruthless asset protection attorney, a man who charged premium rates to untangle wealthy individuals from their own toxic financial webs. The office smelled of old paper, expensive leather, and quiet authority. I slid the manila folder across the desk. Declan opened it, adjusting his silver-framed glasses. He read through the wire transfer logs with practiced speed, his eyes darting across the highlighted routing numbers. "You realize this constitutes financial fraud," Declan stated, his voice a steady, low baritone. "Your father utilized his primary status to drain a joint ledger where the deposits can be explicitly traced to your payroll direct deposits. We can file a police report this afternoon. We can freeze the Magnolia Estate vendor accounts." I shook my head. I am not here to sue them. I am not here to send Thomas to a holding cell. I am here to build a fortress. Declan raised an eyebrow, closing the folder. "You are letting $15,000 walk out the door. It is the price of admission to wash my hands of them forever," I replied, my voice steady. "I need you to verify that every other financial liability tying me to Patricia Thomas or Savannah is legally severed. The auto loan is in default. The bank is moving to repossess the asset. When the fallout hits, I cannot afford a single vulnerability." Declan nodded, understanding the strategy. He opened his laptop, pulling up the credit profile and the legal documents I had emailed his paralegal prior to the meeting. He audited my standing with the precision of a surgeon looking for malignant tissue. We spent the next hour dissecting my digital footprint. We discovered a legacy department store credit card Patricia had opened in my name during my freshman year of college. Declan drafted an immediate closure request. We placed a hard freeze on my Social Security number with all 3 major bureaus, ensuring my parents could not open desperate, unauthorized lines of credit when their cash flow inevitably dried up. When the review was complete, Declan steepled his fingers and leaned back in his chair. "You are an island, Fiona," he assured me. "The vehicle default belongs entirely to Savannah. Your name is removed from the payment portals and the primary note is in her name. The unauthorized wire transfers are documented and insulated in my filing cabinet. If your parents try to drag you down when their own creditors come calling, they will hit a reinforced steel wall. You have 0 remaining liabilities." I thanked him, paid the retainer fee with a cashier's check, and walked out of the high-rise building. The Nashville heat hit me as I stepped onto the pavement, but I did not feel suffocated. I felt invincible. The trap was fully set, the safety measures were engaged, and there was nothing left to do but wait for the inevitable crash. As I walked toward my parked sedan, my phone buzzed in my purse. A text message from Patricia illuminated the screen. She wanted to meet for a private lunch tomorrow at a cafe downtown. She claimed we needed to clear the air after the misunderstanding at the country club. I knew exactly what she wanted. She wanted to reestablish control before the monthly bills came due. I typed a single word in reply. Perfect. I locked my phone and slid it back into my bag. The country club facade had cracked. The safety net was stolen. And tomorrow I was going to hand my mother a consequence she could not charm her way out of. The bistro I selected for our lunch meeting was located in a busy commercial district miles away from the manicured lawns of Belmead. It was a practical, mid-tier establishment that served reliable roasted chicken and filtered tap water in heavy glass tumblers. There were no valet stands outside. There were no country club members sipping imported wine at the adjacent tables. It was a place designed for working professionals on their lunch hour, a demographic my mother viewed with distinct pity. Patricia arrived 12 minutes late. She navigated the crowded dining room wearing a tailored linen suit and oversized designer sunglasses, treating the narrow aisles like a hazardous obstacle course. She slid into the vinyl booth across from me, her posture rigid, her lips pressed into a thin line of profound disapproval. Fiona, darling, Patricia began lowering her sunglasses just enough to inspect the laminated menu resting on the table. I cannot fathom why you insisted on this specific location. The acoustics in here are dreadful, and the parking situation is practically a public hazard. We could have gone to the terrace at the club. Chef Michel just introduced a lovely summer salad menu. I took a slow sip of my iced tea. The condensation felt cool against my fingers. I chose this place because it is quiet in its own way, I replied. Nobody here knows us. Nobody here cares about our last name. Patricia scoffed gently, waving a dismissive hand. She signaled for a waiter, ordering a sparkling water with a twist of lemon, emphasizing the brand name of the water she preferred. The young waiter nodded politely and hurried away. My mother leaned forward, resting her forearms on the table, attempting to project a maternal warmth that failed to reach her eyes. "Let us clear the air about last night," Patricia said, using her most soothing, practiced tone. "You were tired. Work has clearly been stressing you out, and you had a minor lapse in judgment at the gala. I smoothed things over with the board. I told them you were fighting a migraine. But we need to establish better boundaries regarding how we present ourselves in public. Family stands united, Fiona, always." I listened to her rewrite history. She was offering me an exit ramp, a convenient excuse to step back into my assigned role as the silent, compliant financier of the family image. I did not take it. Instead, I reached into my leather tote bag and withdrew a single sheet of premium legal paper. Declan had prepared it yesterday afternoon. I placed the document on the bare table and slid it across the surface. It stopped inches from Patricia's manicured hands. "What is this?" she asked, a flicker of genuine confusion crossing her features. "It is a formal revocation of authorized user status," I stated, keeping my voice level and devoid of any emotional inflection. I contacted the issuer for the Legacy Department Store credit card, along with the 2 secondary travel accounts. Your access privileges are officially terminated. The physical cards in your wallet are now dormant plastic. You will need to secure your own lines of credit moving forward. Patricia stared at the legal text. Her eyes darted back and forth across the page, absorbing the undeniable reality of the typed words. The confusion morphed rapidly. The maternal facade fractured, peeling away to reveal a defensive, simmering rage. The temperature at our table seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You are revoking my access," Patricia whispered, her voice tightening like a coiled spring. "After everything your father and I have provided for you, after the life we've built for this family, you hand me a legal notice in a cheap diner because I asked you to cover a catering bill?" "It is not about the catering bill," I replied, maintaining unbroken eye contact. "It is about closing the bank. I am no longer funding the illusion." Patricia bristled, her hands curled into fists on the tabletop. "You are being impossibly petty, Fiona. This is exactly what I was talking about at the barbecue. You harbor this deep, toxic jealousy toward your sister. Savannah is about to experience the happiest day of her life, and instead of supporting her, you are sitting here drafting legal threats. You are trying to ruin her wedding joy because you cannot stand to see her in the spotlight." The sheer audacity of the pivot was remarkable. She was attempting to use emotional leverage, shifting the narrative so that my financial self-preservation was framed as a calculated attack on my sister's happiness. "Family must always support each other," Patricia continued, her voice rising just a fraction. "When one of us succeeds, we all succeed. We pool our resources. We lift each other up." I let her finish the sermon. I waited for the echoes of her self-righteous indignation to fade into the ambient noise of the restaurant. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, closing the physical distance between us. "Speaking of pooled resources," I said, my tone dropping to a quiet, dangerous register, "let us discuss the joint emergency savings account." Patricia froze. The righteous anger stalled in her chest. $15,000, Mom. I continued, enunciating every syllable. Money I earned filing legal briefs when I was 16. Money I saved from my first corporate bonuses. I audited the ledger yesterday morning. The balance is 0. Thomas authorized 3 wire transfers over the past 45 days directly into the merchant account for the Magnolia estate. My mother swallowed hard, but the hesitation lasted only a fraction of a second. A master of narcissistic deflection, she refused to accept the label of a thief. She simply reframed the crime. That was an advance, Patricia stated, lifting her chin in a defiant gesture. Savannah needed the venue deposit secured before the end of the quarter. Your father and I are dealing with a temporary cash flow issue due to some unforeseen market fluctuations. Chase is launching a new venture next month. Once his initial funding round closes, they will replenish the account. It is just a short-term family loan. A short-term family loan, I repeated the words, tasting like ash in my mouth. A loan requires consent. You forged a withdrawal on my decade of labor to rent a plantation for a single afternoon. You stole my security to buy her a stage. And you are depending on a man whose only registered business is suspended by the state tax board to pay me back. Chase is an entrepreneur, Patricia snapped, her voice carrying a shrill edge of panic. You do not understand how venture capital works. You only see numbers on a spreadsheet. You have no vision. The encounter crystallized everything I needed to know. There was 0 reasoning with a narcissist. Patricia felt no remorse for draining my savings because in her mind, my assets were merely extensions of her own divine right to maintain status. The theft was justified by her twisted logic of familial optics. Any further conversation would just be a pointless debate with a brick wall. I stood up from the vinyl booth. I opened my wallet, extracted a crisp $5 bill, and placed it on the table to cover the cost of my iced tea. You can handle your own sparkling water, I said, looking down at her. Do not contact me again to ask for money. The well is dry. Patricia sputtered, her mouth opening and closing as she searched for a final, devastating insult, but I was already turning away. I walked down the narrow aisle, pushed through the heavy glass doors of the restaurant, and stepped out into the blinding midday sun. The heat radiating off the asphalt parking lot was intense, but I took a deep, cleansing breath of the humid air. The final boundary line was drawn. The toxic tether was severed. I reached my sedan and unlocked the doors, but before I slid into the driver's seat, I retrieved my phone from my bag. A push notification was waiting on the lock screen, sent from the encrypted credit monitoring application I had configured to track Savannah's auto loan. I swiped to open the alert. The digital text confirmed the next phase of the operation. Account status critical. Delinquency exceeds 60 days. Collateral recovery order authorized. Asset reassigned to local repossession agency. The lender had officially contracted a third-party towing service operating within the Nashville metropolitan area. The digital paperwork was signed, sealed, and dispatched. The Alpine white vehicle was no longer a symbol of prestige. It was a targeted asset with a bounty on its chassis. I started my engine feeling a profound sense of anticipation. The dominoes were falling exactly as planned. 90 days. In the commercial lending sector, crossing the 90-day delinquency threshold represents a point of no return. The financial institution no longer views the borrower as a struggling client requiring assistance. The bank recategorizes the individual as a hostile liability. The primary asset transitions from a secured loan into a targeted recovery operation. The creditor stops asking for payment and starts demanding the collateral. Savannah remained blissfully unaware of her newly assigned hostile status. She lived in a high-end gated residential community situated in the trendy Gulch district of Nashville. The property management marketed the complex as an urban oasis, featuring a resident clubhouse designed to mimic the lobby of a luxury boutique hotel. Savannah had reserved this expansive room for her bridal shower, transforming the modern space into a floral wonderland. I arrived 30 minutes after the printed invitation time. I wore a tailored charcoal sheath dress and nude pumps, projecting a quiet, unbothered authority. I stepped through the double glass doors, immediately assaulted by the overwhelming fragrance of imported peonies and expensive vanilla candles. The room was packed with the most judgmental socialites in our zip code. Women draped in pastel chiffon and silk mingled around a custom champagne wall, balancing delicate plates of artisanal appetizers. I selected a flute of sparkling cider from a passing tray and navigated toward the periphery of the room. I had no intention of socializing. I attended purely out of morbid curiosity. I needed to witness the final moments of the illusion I had unknowingly financed for the past 8 months. Savannah held court near the center of the room, standing strategically in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows. She wore a fitted white lace cocktail dress, her engagement ring catching the ambient light whenever she gestured. She possessed a natural gravity, pulling the attention of every guest into her orbit. Patricia hovered a few feet away, beaming with profound pride, ensuring every empty glass was promptly refilled. I listened as Savannah regaled a group of older country club wives with fictional tales of her modern success. She painted a vibrant picture of Chase's booming venture capital firm, conveniently omitting the suspended business license and the multiple vendor liens I had uncovered. She spoke about her real estate career as if she were closing commercial high-rises instead of struggling to lease starter homes. "It just takes relentless focus," Savannah announced, projecting her voice so the surrounding tables could hear her sermon. "You have to manifest your reality." Chase and I agreed early on that we would never settle for mediocrity. We work hard so we can enjoy the rewards without compromise. She turned slightly, pointing a manicured finger through the expansive glass panels. She directed the crowd's attention to the VIP parking zone located directly outside the clubhouse patio. The Alpine white luxury vehicle sat glistening in the afternoon sun, parked diagonally across 2 spaces to prevent any potential door dings. Seeing the physical manifestation of your goals every single morning is the best motivation, Savannah proclaimed, placing a hand over her heart. The women surrounding her nodded in solemn agreement, offering a chorus of validating murmurs. I took a slow sip of my cider. The irony tasted remarkably sweet. My quiet isolation did not last. 2 of Savannah's bridesmaids detached from the main group and sauntered over to my corner table. They wore matching blush pink dresses and identical expressions of practiced condescension. I recognized them from high school. They were women who had peaked during their senior prom and spent their adult lives chasing that fading glory through aggressive social climbing. Fiona, one of them, chimed, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "We were just saying how brave it is for you to show up today wearing such a corporate outfit to a bridal shower. It screams dedicated employee." The second bridesmaid offered a sympathetic tilt of her head. "It must be so difficult working those long hours in a cubicle while Savannah is out building an empire with Chase. Does your bank ever let you leave early for family events, or are you chained to a desk counting pennies all day?" They were echoing Patricia's established narrative. They were attempting to diminish my reality to elevate Savannah's fantasy. The old version of me would have shrunk under their collective gaze, offering a self-deprecating joke to diffuse the tension. I did not shrink. I looked directly into their eyes. I offered a slow, serene smile. "I do not count pennies," I replied, my voice steady and impossibly calm. "I manage risk. I evaluate when a foundation is strong and when a structure is about to collapse under its own weight. My bank affords me the luxury of a very comfortable reality." The serene smile remained fixed on my face. The sheer lack of defensive posturing unnerved them. They expected a flustered, jealous sister. Instead, they encountered an immovable object. The first bridesmaid cleared her throat, shifting her weight awkwardly. Savannah, sensing a disturbance in her carefully curated atmosphere, glanced over her shoulder. Our eyes met across the crowded room. My unbothered expression sent a visible ripple of unease through her posture. She quickly turned back to her audience, eager to regain control of the narrative. The caterers chimed a silver bell signaling the beginning of the gift-opening ceremony. The guests arranged themselves on plush velvet sofas and gilded chairs, forming a semicircle around a large tufted ottoman holding a mountain of wrapped boxes. Savannah took her seat in the center, flanked by her blush-pink attendants. She systematically tore through the expensive wrapping paper, unveiling crystal decanters, imported silk bedding, and high-end espresso machines. She offered breathless theatrical gratitude for every luxury item, emphasizing the retail value of the gifts. Then she reached into the pile and pulled out my modest silver box. I had purchased a standard mid-tier blender directly off her official registry. It was a practical, sensible appliance. Savannah held the box up, ensuring everyone in the room could see the brand name. She slowly untied the ribbon, adopting an expression of performative delight. "Oh, Fiona," Savannah gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. "A blender! How incredibly practical. This is just so you, always thinking about the basics. Chase and I can use this to make protein shakes when we are rushing out to our business meetings." She scanned the room, her eyes wide with manufactured appreciation. The bridesmaids exchanged knowing, mocking glances. A few of the older guests offered tight, polite smiles, silently judging the perceived inadequacy of my contribution. Savannah was weaponizing the blender, using my gift as a prop to highlight my supposed frugality and lack of sophistication. The tension in the room grew heavy thick, with a dramatic irony that only I could taste. The audience believed they were witnessing a triumphant, wealthy bride graciously accepting a meager offering from her jealous older sister. I knew they were watching a financially bankrupt woman clinging to stolen prestige. I maintained my composed smile. I nodded at Savannah, acknowledging her theatrical gratitude. "Enjoy it," I said quietly. "A solid foundation is important." The shower reached a crescendo of superficial grandeur. Waiters circulated with fresh trays of champagne. Savannah stood up, posing for photographs, with her bridesmaids holding her crystal flute high in the air. Laughter bounced off the high ceilings. I shifted my gaze away from the flashbulbs. I looked past Savannah's perfectly styled blonde hair, staring out through the expansive floor-to-ceiling windows. Beyond the manicured hedges and the pristine brick retaining walls, the heavy wrought iron gates of the apartment complex slowly glided open. A massive, unmarked flatbed tow truck rolled onto the sunlit pavement. The industrial vehicle was a stark, brutal contrast to the luxury environment. The diesel engine grumbled, vibrating against the pristine surroundings. The driver, wearing a neon yellow safety vest, navigated the tight roundabout with practiced precision. He did not pause to ask for directions. He bypassed the guest parking area entirely. He steered the heavy-duty rig straight toward the VIP parking zone, aligning the reinforced steel flatbed directly in front of the gleaming alpine white luxury vehicle. The gears locked into place. The final domino tipped over. The industrial hum of the diesel engine cut through the delicate chatter of the clubhouse like a serrated blade. Inside the glass-walled room, a hired cellist played a soft classical sonata, providing a refined, elegant soundtrack for the bridal shower. Waiters carried silver trays loaded with miniature crab cakes and crystal flutes of Prosecco. The air conditioning hummed, keeping the wealthy attendees perfectly chilled. Outside, reality was backing into the VIP parking space. The heavy-duty flatbed truck emitted a rhythmic mechanical beeping as it reversed toward the patio. A hydraulic winch groaned, a harsh metallic sound that vibrated through the foundation of the building. The noise was jarring, an abrasive, blue-collar intrusion into Savannah's carefully curated pastel paradise. I stood near the corner table, my cider untouched, watching the scene unfold through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Savannah was in the middle of laughing at a joke told by the bridesmaid, who had mocked my corporate job just minutes prior. Savannah held a fresh crystal champagne flute in her right hand, posing for a candid photograph. The hydraulic lift of the tow truck slammed down onto the asphalt pavement with a resounding metal clank. The heavy vibration rattled the clubhouse glass. Savannah turned her head toward the window. Her perfectly sculpted smile froze. The color drained from her cheeks in real time, leaving her expensive designer foundation looking like a pale, unnatural mask. Her fingers went slack. The crystal flute slipped from her grasp, plummeting toward the polished hardwood floor. It shattered into dozens of glittering pieces, splashing expensive champagne across the toes of a guest's designer leather shoes. The sudden noise of breaking glass silenced the room. The cellist stopped playing mid-bow, the final note hanging awkwardly in the air. 60 heads swiveled from the shattered crystal to the expansive windows. Savannah did not apologize to the guest whose shoes were soaked. She did not call for a waiter to sweep up the hazard. She hitched up the hem of her white lace cocktail dress and sprinted toward the double patio doors, her heels clicking frantically against the wood. Her blush-pink attendants trailed behind her like a flock of confused flamingos, their pastel dresses fluttering in her wake. I followed at a measured, deliberate pace, maintaining my distance, stepping carefully around the broken glass. I pushed through the heavy doors and stepped out into the thick, humid Nashville afternoon. The heavy heat hit us instantly. The repo agent was a tall, broad-shouldered man wearing a neon yellow safety vest over a faded gray uniform. He wore thick leather work gloves and steel-toed boots. He held a thick digital tablet in one hand and operated a steel winch remote with the other. He moved with the bored, efficient precision of a man who dealt with screaming, defaulting debtors every single day of the week. He did not care about designer labels or country club memberships. He only cared about the vehicle identification number. "Hey," Savannah screamed, her voice cracking, stripping away every ounce of her practiced Southern charm. "What do you think you are doing? Stop right now. Get away from my vehicle." The agent did not flinch. He did not even look up from his digital tablet. He simply crouched down and hooked a heavy steel chain around the front axle of the Alpine white luxury car. The metal links clinked against the chassis, a definitive sound of ownership changing hands. "Are you deaf?" Savannah shrieked, sprinting across the manicured grass toward the parking zone. "I am calling the police. You are stealing my private property. Do you have any idea who I am? My fiancé is a venture capitalist. You are going to lose your job for this. I will have you arrested." The agent secured the second chain and finally stood up to face her. He tapped the screen of his tablet, pulled a folded piece of yellow carbon paper from a metal clipboard attached to his belt, and held it out to her. He possessed the profound, unshakable apathy of a professional debt collector. "There is no mistake, ma'am," the agent said, his voice a flat, gravelly monotone that easily cut over her screaming. "This asset is scheduled for involuntary recovery due to 90 days of non-payment. The lien holder executed the default clause early this morning. The local authorities already have the repossession order on file. Calling the police will just waste your phone battery. Step back from the machinery, please." Savannah snatched the yellow paper from his thick leather glove. Her eyes darted across the printed text. The word default was stamped in bold black ink across the top margin. She shook her head frantically, her blonde hair falling out of its perfect styling, sticking to her sweaty forehead. Back inside the clubhouse, the initial shock had worn off, replaced by the ruthless, predatory currency of high society gossip. The country club wives and judgmental socialites pressed themselves against the glass windows, their eyes wide with morbid fascination. I watched several women discreetly pull out their smartphones. The red recording lights blinked through the glass. The ultimate societal disgrace was being digitally preserved for the Belle Meade group chats. Every woman in that room who had smiled at Savannah 10 minutes ago was now securing front-row footage of her financial demise. Savannah's eyes scanned the patio, wildly desperate for an administrative lifeline, until they locked onto me. She saw me standing near the edge of the concrete patio, my posture relaxed, my hands empty. Her panic mutated into desperate, entitled indignation. She assumed I was still her shield. She assumed her safety net was simply tangled a minor banking glitch that I was obligated to unravel. "Fiona," Savannah yelled, marching toward me and waving the yellow carbon copy in the humid air like a distress flag. "Call your bank right now. There is a clerical error. They messed up the auto draft. Tell this man to drop my car. Tell him you are a senior credit manager and fix this." The silence on the patio was absolute. The bridesmaids held their breath, clutching their small purses. The women pressing their phones against the clubhouse windows strained to hear my response. Patricia had finally emerged from the building, pushing through the crowd. Her face was flushed red with sheer terror as she witnessed her carefully constructed illusion crumbling in the bright afternoon sun. I did not pull out my phone. I did not break eye contact with my sister. I let the heavy, suffocating silence stretch for 5 agonizing seconds, forcing Savannah to feel the full weight of the public spotlight she had craved so desperately all afternoon. I wanted her to feel the exact temperature of the stage she had built using my stolen savings. "There is no clerical error, Savannah," I said. I pitched my voice perfectly. It was not a shout. It was a clear, resonant statement designed to carry across the quiet patio and penetrate the glass walls of the clubhouse. I canceled the auto draft on the day of the neighborhood barbecue. Savannah stopped walking. Her mouth parted in silent, genuine confusion. "I have not made a payment in 3 months," I continued enunciating every single word with cold, deliberate precision. "You claimed you were a successful real estate agent. You claimed you and Chase were building an empire together. But you defaulted on the very first invoice that required your own money. It is not my car anymore, and it is certainly not yours." The color that had rushed back into Savannah's face during her tantrum vanished again. She looked down at the yellow default notice, then back up at me, the reality of her financial insolvency crashing down upon her in front of Nashville's most vicious gossips. She had spent the last 2 hours bragging about her independent wealth, attributing her luxury lifestyle to relentless hustle and elite vision. Now the entire guest list knew she was a fraud, riding on the back of my paycheck. Patricia stepped forward, her hands shaking. "Fiona," she gasped, her voice a fragile, panicked whisper that barely carried over the idling diesel engine. "What have you done?" "I merely stopped paying for a vehicle I do not drive," I replied, shifting my gaze to my mother. "The bank is just collecting their property." Behind us, the hydraulic lift whined a final time. The front wheels of the Alpine White status symbol lifted off the pavement, suspending the luxury vehicle in the air. The agent climbed into the cab of the flatbed, shifted the heavy truck into drive, and rolled slowly through the wrought iron gates. The diesel exhaust lingered in the humid air, marking the exact spot where Savannah's Prestige used to sit. I turned my back on the empty parking space. I walked past my frozen sister, past my hyperventilating mother, and headed toward the exit path. As I walked, the deafening silence broke. The sound started low, a soft, buzzing hum that quickly escalated. It was the sound of 60 wealthy guests leaning in close to one another, their phones buzzing with fresh text messages. The country club elite were whispering. The reputation Patricia had sacrificed my teenage savings to build was officially dead, and I knew the real war was just about to begin. I pulled my charcoal sedan into the driveway of my townhouse exactly 28 minutes after the heavy-duty tow truck rolled out of the apartment complex gates. I shifted the gear selector into park and killed the engine. The silence inside the cabin felt vast and profoundly peaceful. The humid Tennessee afternoon baked the pavement outside, but inside my car, the residual air conditioning offered a crisp, cool sanctuary. My mobile device rested in the center console cup holder. It had remained dark for the entire drive from the Gulch. The delay was predictable. Patricia needed time to usher her weeping youngest daughter away from the judgmental stares of the Belmead registry. My mother needed to salvage whatever fragments of her social standing remained before she could retreat to a secure location and plot her retaliation. Right on schedule, the glass screen illuminated. The incoming caller identification displayed Patricia's name in bold lettering. I did not hesitate. I tapped the green icon to accept the call and routed the audio through the Bluetooth speakers of my vehicle. "You vindictive little snake," Patricia shrieked. The volume was so intense the digital audio distorted, buzzing harshly against the plastic grills of my car speakers. The refined, honey-soaked southern drawl she utilized for country club galas was entirely gone. In its place was a shrill, guttural wail of pure, unadulterated panic. The public humiliation had stripped away her polished exterior, leaving nothing but raw familial warfare. "Are you out of your mind?" my mother bellowed, her breaths hitching unevenly. "You humiliated us. You humiliated your sister in front of the entire Belmead Social Committee. Do you have any idea who was standing on that patio?" The wife of the hospital chief of staff was recording the entire ordeal on her phone. "You orchestrated this spectacle out of pure spite, just to ruin Savannah's bridal shower." I leaned back against the leather headrest, resting my hands in my lap. My pulse remained slow and steady, beating at a relaxed, resting rate. In the commercial banking sector, I spent countless hours negotiating with desperate corporate debtors whose companies were crumbling. A screaming client is a client who has exhausted all their leverage. Patricia possessed zero leverage, and her elevated volume only confirmed my strategic advantage. "You are going to fix this today," Patricia demanded, her voice vibrating with a frantic authoritarian command. "I do not care what strings you have to pull at your little bank. You will call the lending department this very second. You will wire whatever funds are necessary to release that vehicle from the impound lot, and you will have it delivered back to Savannah's apartment before the sun goes down." She paused, inhaling a ragged breath. "If you do not buy that car back right now, Fiona, I swear you will never show your face at another family gathering as long as you live." I allowed the threat to hang in the quiet cabin of my sedan. I listened to the faint static of the cellular connection. When I finally spoke, I did not elevate my voice. I did not yell. I dictated. "The vehicle is gone, Mom," I stated, my tone resembling the flat delivery of an automated ledger. "I cannot buy it back because I am no longer an authorized party on the financing agreement. I revoked my co-signer status when I terminated the auto draft." "That is impossible," Patricia snapped, refusing to accept the administrative reality. "You signed the paperwork. You are responsible." "I was responsible for exactly $7,200. I corrected her, enunciating each syllable with forensic precision. "That is the exact sum I spent over the past 8 months subsidizing Savannah's fraudulent lifestyle. I paid $1,200 every 30 days while your favored daughter paraded around Nashville pretending to be a real estate mogul." "You agreed to help her," Patricia interrupted, attempting to regain control of the narrative. "It was an investment. An investment implies a return." I countered, my voice turning icy. "What you executed was a systematic extraction, but the vehicle payments were just the minor offenses. Let us discuss the real crime. Let us discuss the $15,000 you and Thomas stole from my legacy savings account." The Bluetooth speaker fell dead silent. The sudden absence of her shrieking was deafening. I traced the wire transfers. I continued methodically laying out the evidence, like a prosecutor presenting Exhibit A. 3 separate transactions, authorized by Thomas, routed directly to the merchant deposit account for the Magnolia estate. You drained the safety net I built from my teenage labor to rent a plantation for a wedding reception. You cannibalized my financial security because you were too proud to admit you could not afford the venue. "We were going to pay it back," Patricia whispered, her voice wavering, the authoritarian command shattering under the weight of undeniable proof. "Chase is closing a huge funding round next week. Chase is legally bankrupt," I stated, driving the final nail into her constructed illusion. I pulled the public corporate filings for Apex Synergy Holdings. His business license was suspended by the state franchise tax board 6 months ago. He has 3 active judgments against him for unpaid vendor invoices. Your future son-in-law is a financial parasite, and Savannah is marrying into a mountain of toxic debt. I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. The truth was a foreign language to Patricia, and she was struggling to translate the catastrophic data I was feeding her. I sat down with a private asset protection attorney yesterday afternoon. I informed her, ensuring she understood the permanent nature of my exit. My legal counsel severed every remaining tie between my Social Security number and your household. You are removed from my secondary credit lines. A hard freeze is locked onto my identity. I am legally and structurally detached from your impending collapse." "What collapse?" Patricia stammered, the reality of her incompetence finally piercing her denial. "The deficiency balance," I replied, explaining the grim mechanics of American automotive lending. "The repo agency will transport that luxury vehicle to a wholesale auction. It will sell for a fraction of the original purchase price. The lender will take the auction proceeds and apply it to the outstanding loan. The remaining gap, which will likely be tens of thousands of dollars, is called a deficiency balance." I paused, letting the financial terminology sink into her mind. "And since I severed my authorization, I concluded the collections department will assign that massive deficiency balance entirely to Savannah. Her name is the only one left on the ledger. They will garnish whatever meager real estate commissions she manages to scrape together. They will annihilate her credit score for the next 7 years. She will not qualify for a mortgage. She will not qualify for a standard credit card. Her financial life is officially over." The silence stretched again, but this time it was broken by the sound of quiet, desperate sobbing. Patricia realized her demands were useless. The aggressive intimidation tactics had failed. Faced with the terrifying arithmetic of her own actions, she executed her final pathetic pivot. She resorted to emotional manipulation. "Fiona, please," Patricia cried, her voice trembling with manufactured fragility. "Why are you doing this to us? You are tearing your own family apart. Savannah is inconsolable. Your father is going to have a heart attack when he hears about the bank. We are your blood. How can you be so cruel?" I stared out through the windshield of my car, looking at the sturdy brick exterior of the home I had purchased with my own unassisted income. I felt no guilt. I felt no obligation. The emotional tethers she was trying to pluck had been severed the moment I saw the zero balance in my savings account. "I am not tearing the family apart, Mom," I said, my voice tranquil and resolute. "I simply stopped being the bank that funded your delusions. Good luck with the wedding." I reached out and tapped the red icon on the digital console. The call disconnected, severing the connection and plunging the cabin back into absolute silence. I sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, savoring the profound closure of the conversation. I had handed my mother the terrifying reality of her own financial incompetence, leaving her alone to face the catastrophic deficiency balance, heading straight for her favorite daughter. I grabbed my purse from the passenger seat, stepped out into the humid evening air, and walked toward my front door. The immediate battle was won, but I knew the Williams family lacked the capacity for quiet surrender. Patricia and Savannah would never accept accountability. Their desperation would inevitably curdle into retaliation, and the next phase of their survival strategy would likely take place in the court of public opinion. The weekend arrived with a relentless barrage of digital noise. I woke up on Saturday morning to my cell phone vibrating across my bedside table, a continuous rhythm of notifications that signaled an impending disaster. I reached out the screen, illuminating the dim bedroom. 74 unread alerts cluttered the display. Most of them originated from social media platforms I rarely checked. Savannah had weaponized her aesthetic. Denied her luxury vehicle and stripped of her false prestige, she retreated to the only arena where she still commanded an audience. She posted a stark black and white photograph of herself, looking forlorn, staring out the window of her high-rise apartment. The caption was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive victimization, carefully omitting any factual details while painting a vivid portrait of unprovoked betrayal. "Sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones waiting to tear you down," Savannah wrote, learning hard lessons this week about toxic family members and the reality of financial abuse. Just because someone wears a corporate suit does not mean they have a heart. Guard your peace. Chase and I are moving forward, focusing on genuine love and leaving the jealousy behind us. Patricia was the first person to reply in the comments section. Her response was equally calculated, designed to validate Savannah's suffering while projecting a facade of resilient maternal grace. We will get through this dark chapter together, sweetheart. True wealth is measured in character, not bank accounts. We pray for those who let bitterness cloud their judgment. They were spinning a masterful narrative. In their revised history, the vehicle repossession was not the inevitable result of 90 days of non-payment. It was a calculated, punitive strike executed by an envious older sister. They implied I had utilized my banking credentials to sabotage Savannah's credit, starving her of resources just weeks before her wedding day out of pure spite. The collateral damage materialized instantly. The minor conflict ignited as extended relatives and longtime family friends rushed to take Patricia's side without requesting a single verifying fact. My private inbox filled with a deluge of disappointed messages. Aunt Carol, my father's sister, who had not spoken to me since Thanksgiving, sent a lengthy text expressing her profound heartbreak over my cruel behavior. "I expected more from you, Fiona," Aunt Carol wrote. "Your sister is about to walk down the aisle. Using your financial knowledge to punish her during such a sacred time is just shameful. Your parents are devastated. You need to fix this and beg for their forgiveness before you cause irreversible damage to this family." Several country club wives chimed in through direct messages offering unsolicited advice about the dangers of prioritizing a career over familial loyalty. They treated Savannah's narrative as gospel. In the insulated, gossip-fueled ecosystem of Belle Meade, a compelling tragedy always outsells the boring truth. I sat on the edge of my mattress reading the incoming indictments. My jaw tightened, and a brief, sharp sting of betrayal flared in my chest. The instinct to defend myself was powerful. I could easily take screenshots of the bank ledgers, draft a comprehensive timeline of the missed payments, and publish the undeniable proof on my own profile. I could expose the whole illusion to their digital audience. I took a deep breath, forcing the emotional impulse down. Engaging in a messy public defense was a trap. Arguing in the comment sections of a social media application would only drag me into their preferred arena of manufactured drama. The country club elite thrived on public mud wrestling, and I refused to soil my reputation by participating in their circus. I required a cold, professional solution. I walked into my kitchen, brewed a pot of coffee, and placed a call to Declan. My attorney answered on the second ring, his voice crisp and alert despite the early weekend hour. I outlined the digital smear campaign, reading Savannah's caption and Patricia's validating comments aloud. I summarized the influx of hostile messages from our extended social circle. "They are establishing a paper trail of defamation." Declan noted the sound of a keyboard clacking in the background. "Claiming you committed financial abuse is a direct assault on your professional livelihood. As a credit portfolio manager, your career depends heavily on your ethical standing. We can litigate this." "I do not want to endure a lengthy court battle," I replied, pouring the dark roast coffee into a ceramic mug. "I want to amputate the problem. I want to draft a single document that terrifies my mother into total silence." Declan understood the assignment perfectly. I drove to his downtown office an hour later. We sat in his glass-walled conference room composing a formal cease and desist letter that functioned as a legal guillotine. The terminology we selected was devoid of emotion, relying entirely on the crushing weight of statutory consequences. The document explicitly outlined the definition of libel within the state of Tennessee. It ordered Patricia, Savannah, and Chase to retract all defamatory statements regarding my personal character and professional conduct immediately. But the true power of the letter resided in the secondary clause. We stipulated that any further attempts to disparage my name would result in an immediate civil lawsuit for defamation. I looked across the table at Declan and instructed him to list the exact evidence we would introduce during the discovery phase of that potential trial. We itemized the $15,000 unauthorized withdrawal from my legacy savings account, identifying the specific routing numbers attached to the Magnolia estate. We documented the defaulted luxury auto loan and the resulting repossession order. Finally, we cited the suspended business license and active vendor judgments currently haunting Chase's defunct limited liability company. "If they force us into a courtroom," Declan explained, "reviewing the final draft, every single one of these financial failures becomes a matter of public record. The transcripts will be available to any real estate broker, any country club board member, and any local gossip columnist willing to perform a basic background search. The threat of public exposure struck at the very core of Patricia's deepest fear. She could survive a private conflict, but she could never survive the Belmead socialites discovering her genuine insolvency. Unveiling the theft, the unpaid debt, and the impending foreclosure would shatter her carefully curated dynasty forever. Declan printed 3 copies of the finalized letter onto premium, watermarked bond paper. He slipped them into thick cardboard envelopes. We did not send them via standard delivery. We utilized a priority courier service requiring a direct physical signature from the recipients to ensure a verified chain of custody. I returned home and spent the remainder of the afternoon monitoring the tracking numbers on my laptop screen. At 3:45, the digital status bar updated. The courier had arrived at the gated apartment complex in the Gulch. A digital signature confirming Savannah's receipt appeared on the registry. 20 minutes later, a second signature confirmed Patricia had received her envelope at the suburban estate. I opened a new browser tab and navigated back to the social media platforms. I waited, watching the digital clock in the corner of my monitor tick forward. I anticipated a final, desperate outburst, a parting shot, before the reality of the legal threat settled over them. Instead, the digital landscape shifted with breathtaking speed. Savannah's stark black and white photograph vanished, replaced by a generic error message indicating the content was no longer available. I refreshed the page. Her profile switched from public to private. I checked Patricia's account. Her validating comments were erased, and her recent updates were scrubbed clean. The smear campaign evaporated in less than 15 minutes. The sudden, deafening silence from the Williams camp radiated through the screen. My inbox stopped receiving disappointed messages from misinformed relatives. The relentless buzzing of my cell phone ceased. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling a long, steady breath. The legal boundary was established, and the threat of public ruin had successfully cornered them into compliance. They were silenced, stripped of their preferred weapons, and forced to retreat into the shadows of their mounting debt. Yet as the quiet afternoon transitioned into dusk, a lingering sense of caution settled over me. Patricia and Savannah were motivated by social preservation, making them predictable. Chase was a different variable. He was a man defined by his fragile ego and his unearned arrogance. Humiliating him by exposing his defunct business entity to his future bride was a wound he would not easily forgive. Stripped of his luxury transportation and his public platform, a man like Chase would inevitably seek retaliation in a venue where he believed I was most vulnerable. The false peace of the weekend dissolved the moment I stepped through the revolving glass doors of my corporate headquarters on Tuesday morning. The commercial lending department occupied the 22nd floor of a towering steel skyscraper, an environment governed by strict compliance regulations and rigorous ethical standards. I navigated the polished marble lobby, the heels of my pumps clicking a steady rhythm, echoing my focused mindset. My career was built on an unblemished reputation. In the financial sector, trust is your primary currency. Without it, your expertise is worthless. I arrived at my desk, booted up my dual monitors, and prepared to review a new series of corporate asset portfolios. Before I could open the first spreadsheet, a high-priority notification flashed across my screen. It was an urgent calendar summons from the Director of Compliance, a man named Mitchell. The subject line consisted of 2 terrifying words: ethics review. A cold drop of adrenaline hit my stomach. I did not type a response. I locked my workstation, stood up, and walked down the long corridor toward the executive suites. The ambient noise of ringing phones and clacking keyboards faded away as I approached the frosted glass doors of the compliance division. Mitchell sat at the head of a long mahogany conference table. He was a stern, meticulous veteran of the banking industry who viewed every employee as a potential liability. Seated to his right was a senior attorney from the corporate legal department, a woman named Sarah, holding a silver pen poised over a yellow legal pad. The physical atmosphere in the room was heavy, suffocating, and designed to intimidate. "Take a seat," Fiona Mitchell instructed, his tone devoid of any standard morning pleasantries. I sat down, resting my hands in my lap to conceal the slight tremor in my fingers. "We received a formal complaint regarding your professional conduct late last night." Mitchell continued, sliding a printed document across the polished wood. The submission was filed anonymously through our external ethics portal, but the allegations are highly specific. The claimant states that you utilized your internal access privileges to deliberately sabotage a commercial loan application for a local venture capital firm. Furthermore, the complaint alleges you manipulated credit reporting agencies to lower the applicant's score due to a personal vendetta. I looked down at the printed page. The formatting was standard, but the vocabulary utilized within the text was unmistakable. The author used phrases like venture architect and ecosystem synergy. It was the distinct, pretentious dialect of my future brother-in-law. Chase had lost his luxury transportation and his public platform. Stripped of his preferred weapons, his fragile ego demanded immediate retaliation. He assumed that filing a fraudulent ethics grievance would paralyze my career, bringing me to my knees and forcing me to beg for a retraction. He believed a corporate bank would instantly terminate a portfolio manager to avoid a potential scandal. I did not gasp. I did not offer a frantic, desperate denial. I read the entire document, analyzing the clumsy accusations with the detached precision of an auditor finding a mathematical error. "What is the exact name of the venture capital firm referenced in this complaint?" I asked, my voice steady, projecting an unshakable calm. Sarah glanced at her legal pad. "Apex Synergy Holdings." I nodded slowly, placing the document back onto the table. "I have never accessed a commercial file for Apex Synergy Holdings through this institution's secure network," I stated, meeting Mitchell's stern gaze. "You do not need to take my word for it. I request that your information technology department pull my time-stamped audit logs for the past 36 months. Every keystroke I make, every profile I open, is recorded by the internal security software. You will find 0 queries matching that entity." Mitchell frowned, steepling his fingers together. "The claimant insists you accessed his financial records." "I accessed his public filings through the state commercial registry using an external internet browser on a personal device," I clarified, keeping my posture rigidly straight. "It is a matter of public record that his business license was suspended by the Franchise Tax Board half a year ago due to unpaid taxes. He also carries 3 active vendor judgments. He does not have a commercial loan application pending with our bank because his company is legally defunct." Sarah stopped writing. She looked up, her legal instincts catching the scent of perjury on the part of the anonymous claimant. Why would someone file such a detailed, targeted accusation if they have no business relationship with this bank? "Because the claimant is my sister's fiancé," I replied, delivering the final crushing blow to Chase's fabricated narrative. "And he is currently retaliating against me for cutting off the financial subsidies I was providing to his household." I reached into my structured leather tote bag and withdrew a sealed envelope. Inside was a secondary document Declan and I had prepared over the weekend. While I had refused to pursue criminal charges that would send my father to a holding cell, Declan insisted we file an informational police report regarding the forged $15,000 savings withdrawal. It was a defensive measure designed specifically to establish a verified paper trail of the theft in case my family attempted a legal or professional strike. I slid the police report across the mahogany table. Mitchell and Sarah leaned in to read the official local precinct letterhead. The black ink detailed the exact statutes of forgery and unauthorized financial extraction. "My family is currently facing severe financial insolvency," I explained, my tone remaining entirely clinical. "They recently forged my signature to extract $15,000 from a joint legacy account. This police report documents the theft. When I discovered the missing funds, I terminated my voluntary payments on a luxury auto loan, resulting in a public vehicle repossession this past weekend. This ethics complaint is a desperate, vindictive attempt to jeopardize my employment in response to those boundaries." The atmosphere in the conference room shifted instantly. The heavy, intimidating scrutiny directed at me dissolved, replaced by a cold, calculating corporate fury aimed directly at Chase. A multi-billion-dollar financial institution does not tolerate being utilized as a weapon in a petty domestic dispute. Mitchell slid the anonymous complaint back into his folder, shaking his head in sheer disgust. Sarah tapped her silver pen against the yellow pad, a sharp, decisive sound that echoed in the quiet room. This individual filed a false report claiming internal banking manipulation. Sarah noted, her voice dropping to a dangerous register. That constitutes corporate harassment and tortious interference with our business operations. He is wasting our compliance resources and attempting to defraud our ethics committee. She looked directly at me. Do you have his contact information? I recited his phone number, his residential address, and his email address from memory. Instead of packing my desk into a cardboard box, I watched the corporate attorneys pivot their substantial resources to protect the bank's integrity. By noon, Sarah's department had drafted a crushing legal warning addressed to Chase. The firm explicitly outlined the civil and criminal penalties for submitting fraudulent compliance complaints against a senior bank officer. They threatened to pursue punitive damages for defamation and corporate harassment if he ever contacted the institution again. The warning was transmitted via certified email and a physical courier. I sat at my desk, sipping a fresh cup of coffee, imagining the exact moment Chase opened that formidable legal envelope. His fragile, unearned arrogance was officially shattered against the reinforced steel of a corporate legal department. He had tried to ruin my livelihood, and in return, he invited the wrath of a multi-billion-dollar entity. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the downtown skyline, my phone buzzed with a solitary text message from an unknown number. It was Savannah. The message contained no threats, no bravado, and no passive-aggressive victimization. It was a single, terrified sentence. What did you just do to Chase? I deleted the message without replying. Savannah was finally realizing that the man she was about to marry was not a visionary entrepreneur. He was a reckless liability who had just turned her dream wedding into an impending legal nightmare. The corporate strike against Chase secured my professional perimeter. With my legal defenses locked firmly in place, the financial vacuum I left behind in Belmead began to suck the oxygen out of my parents' estate. Removing my name from their secondary credit accounts was not merely a logistical inconvenience for Patricia and Thomas. It was the extraction of a critical structural beam. For years, I quietly absorbed the peripheral costs of their luxury existence. I covered the umbrella insurance premiums that protected their assets. I paid the annual property tax surplus when the county reassessed their land value. I managed the minimum payments on revolving retail debt that my mother racked up maintaining her seasonal wardrobes. My reliable income was the invisible mortar holding their fragile bricks together. Without my regular cash injections, their ecosystem imploded with mathematical certainty. Thomas operated a boutique insurance agency, a legacy business he inherited from his father and subsequently neglected. He preferred playing 18 holes of golf on Tuesday afternoons over securing new commercial clients. His revenue had steadily declined for a decade. Patricia masked this prolonged failure by shuffling balances between high-interest credit cards, executing a dangerous shell game with their liquidity. She would open a new platinum card to pay off the gold card, constantly rotating the debt to avoid default. My silent subsidies were the only thing keeping the ledger from buckling under the compounding interest. The collapse manifested in the form of a certified letter delivered to their mahogany front door. The mortgage lender did not care about the Williams family legacy or their standing in the community. The bank only cared about the 60-day delinquency on the primary estate loan. A pre-foreclosure notice arrived printed on stark legal paper, demanding immediate remittance of the past due balance to prevent public auction proceedings. According to the local network of gossips, a bitter argument erupted inside the colonial residence that same evening. Thomas, clutching the foreclosure warning in his fist, attempted to deflect the blame entirely onto my shoulders. He paced across the imported Persian rugs in his study, insisting that my sudden withdrawal of support was a temporary vindictive tantrum. He yelled at Patricia, commanding her to call me and force a reconciliation. He expected her to wield her usual maternal guilt, demanding I release the funds to save his ancestral home from the auction block. But Patricia finally understood the terrifying reality of our new dynamic. The crushing legal threat I sent via certified courier, combined with the catastrophic deficiency balance currently hanging over Savannah's ruined credit, proved my exit was permanent. They possessed zero leverage. I was a vault they no longer had the combination to open. Patricia looked at her husband and recognized the bitter truth. The bank was permanently closed. She could not charm her way out of a foreclosure notice, and she could not threaten a daughter who held all the receipts. Survival required immediate liquidation, but their physical assets were heavily leveraged. The house carried 2 mortgages. The vehicles were leased. The only available source of liquid capital was the most painful sacrifice imaginable for a Southern socialite. They had to surrender their Belle Meade Country Club membership. The resignation process was swift and devastatingly public. Patricia marched into the club director's office on a Tuesday morning and requested a refund of their annual equity deposit. In her social circle, canceling a membership was synonymous with declaring financial ruin. It was the ultimate social death sentence. The club director processed the paperwork with a polite, pitying smile, writing a check that barely covered 2 months of their outstanding mortgage arrears. The news circulated through the locker rooms in the dining terraces faster than a summer wildfire. The women who had sipped sweet tea on our patio just weeks prior now whispered about Patricia's impending bankruptcy over their afternoon tennis matches. They speculated about the repossession of Savannah's vehicle and connected the dots to the parents' sudden departure from the club. The curated dynasty Patricia spent her entire adult life cultivating was reduced to a cautionary tale served with afternoon cocktails. I monitored this rapid disintegration from the quiet comfort of my townhouse. The sensations swirling in my chest were complex. I felt a hollow, aching grief for the family I always wished I possessed. I mourned the parents who could have loved me for my character rather than my credit limit. Yet that sorrow was vastly eclipsed by a profound, radiant relief. The heavy burden of their endless expectations lifted off my shoulders, leaving me lighter, breathing cleaner air. I was no longer an accessory to their fraud. On a rainy Thursday evening, I sat on my sofa reading a novel. The sound of rain tapping against the window panes provided a soothing rhythm. My phone vibrated on the coffee table. The screen displayed my father's number. I did not reach for the device. I let it ring. The call routed to my digital answering machine. A minute later, a notification popped up indicating a new audio message. I tapped the play icon, bringing the speaker up to my ear. Fiona Honey Thomas began. His voice was thin, carrying a pathetic, wheedling tone I had never heard him use before. He sounded decades older than his actual age, his usual arrogant cadence replaced by sheer desperation. "It is your dad. I know we have had some misunderstandings lately and emotions are running high regarding your sister, but we are facing a slight administrative hurdle with the mortgage servicer. I just need a short-term bridge loan to cover the gap until my quarterly commissions process. Just a temporary injection of capital to keep the house out of the penalty phase. I promise to pay you back with interest. Please call me. We are family." The sheer delusion was staggering. He was sitting in a crumbling mansion, having already stolen $15,000 of my teenage savings to fund a luxury venue deposit, and he was asking for a bridge loan. He still believed he could manipulate my sense of duty. He refused to acknowledge the theft, framing his catastrophic failure as a slight administrative hurdle. I did not listen to the end of the recording. I pressed the delete button midway through his desperate plea. The audio file vanished, erased from my device forever. The illusion of the wealthy Tennessee dynasty shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. They were left as a desperate, broke, older couple sitting in a sprawling mansion they could no longer afford to heat. They were trapped in a prison of their own making, surrounded by expensive antique furniture and empty bank accounts, waiting for the inevitable eviction notice to arrive. The financial lifeline was cut, and I knew their next move would be a final, desperate surrender. The formal request for a meeting did not arrive via a frantic text message or a tearful voicemail. It came through a certified email sent directly to my legal counsel. My parents had exhausted their arsenal of manipulation. The pre-foreclosure notice had effectively backed them into a corner, and the crushing weight of their mounting debt left them with only one remaining avenue of survival. They requested a sit-down mediation. They scheduled the appointment for a Tuesday morning, harboring the desperate delusion that a face-to-face encounter would reboot our old dynamic. In their minds, I was still the compliant daughter who could be swayed by a heavy sigh and a few well-placed tears. They anticipated a dramatic reconciliation inside the law office, envisioning a scenario where I would slide a cashier's check across the table at the 11th hour to save their ancestral estate from the auction block. I arrived at Declan's downtown office 30 minutes early. I wore a tailored slate gray suit, a garment projecting authority and unyielding boundaries. I sat next to my attorney at the far end of a sprawling mahogany conference table. The room smelled of polished wood and expensive leather. A silent digital clock glowed on the wall, marking the steady passage of time. At precisely 10 o'clock, the heavy glass doors opened. Patricia and Thomas walked into the room. The physical toll of the past few weeks was undeniable. My father looked hollowed out, his shoulders slumped beneath a blazer that suddenly seemed 2 sizes too large. His skin carried a pale, ashen quality. Patricia trailed behind him, attempting to maintain her Southern belle posture, but the edges of her facade were visibly fraying. She wore a vintage designer dress, clutching a quilted handbag tightly against her stomach. Her smile was brittle, a forced expression that failed to mask the sheer panic swimming in her eyes. "Fiona, sweetheart," Patricia murmured, taking a tentative step toward my side of the table. Her voice was laced with a rehearsed maternal fragility. "It has been so dreadful being apart from you. We have all been under such terrible stress, and we just want our family back together." I did not stand up. I did not offer a comforting smile. I gestured toward the 2 empty leather chairs positioned on the opposite side of the mahogany expanse. "Please sit down," I instructed. The flat, clinical tone of my voice halted her advance immediately. Patricia blinked, the brittle smile faltering as she slowly lowered herself into the chair. Thomas sat next to her, staring down at his folded hands. They looked across the wide table, searching my face for any trace of the obedient safety net they used to command. They found nothing but a forensic auditor waiting to close an account. We are not here to discuss emotional reconciliations. Declan began establishing the legal perimeter of the meeting. We are here to finalize a severance of liability. My client has prepared a comprehensive accounting of your financial relationship. I reached into my leather briefcase and retrieved a thick, spiral-bound ledger. I placed it flat on the polished wood and pushed it across the table. It glided smoothly, coming to a halt directly in front of my father. "Open it," I said. Thomas hesitated, his fingers trembling slightly as he flipped the heavy cardstock cover. The pages inside were filled with meticulous spreadsheets, line items, and time-stamped transaction records. It was a mathematical autopsy of their parasitism. "That ledger contains a detailed audit of every dollar you have extracted from my income over the past 10 years, I explained, watching their eyes scan the columns of data. I tracked it all. I documented the textbooks I could not afford in college because you diverted my tuition assistance to pay for Savannah's luxury vacations. I itemized the secondary credit cards I paid off for you, the umbrella insurance premiums I covered, and the property tax deficits I quietly absorbed so you could maintain your country club membership." Patricia swallowed hard, her eyes darting away from the pages. "Fiona, you cannot possibly hold those things against us. We provided a roof over your head for 18 years. We are your parents. You were my dependents," I corrected her, my voice slicing through her hollow defense. "But the routine subsidies were just the baseline. Flip to the final tab." Thomas turned a thick stack of pages, arriving at the concluding section of the document. The final tab contained the printed routing numbers from the Magnolia estate and the default notices from Savannah's repossessed vehicle. $7,200 wasted on a luxury car note for a sister who despises me, I recited, staring directly into Patricia's eyes. And $15,000 stolen from a legacy savings account to rent a plantation for a fraudulent wedding. The grand total of your extraction sits at the bottom of that page. Thomas stared at the final, bold figure. He closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the leather chair. The undeniable proof of his cowardice and theft was laid bare in black ink. I am not here to demand restitution, I continued, shifting my gaze between them. I know you are facing an impending foreclosure. I know the club rejected your appeal, and I know your liquidity is non-existent. You do not possess the capital to repay me. Patricia leaned forward, a flicker of desperate hope igniting in her chest. She interpreted my statement as a pardon. If you know we cannot pay, then why did you bring us here? She asked, her voice trembling with anticipation. Are you finally ready to let this go and help us save the house? I am here to offer a trade, I replied, shattering her delusion instantly. Declan withdrew a thin stack of legal documents from his folder and placed them beside the ledger. These were not spreadsheets. These were binding contracts printed on premium watermarked paper. This is a comprehensive severance agreement, Declan stated, his voice resonating with absolute authority. It includes a mutual non-disparagement clause. But the primary component is a permanent waiver of filial responsibility. By signing this document, you legally relinquish any current or future claims to financial support, housing assistance, or medical care from my client. You will sever all ties. You will never contact her employer, you will never request a bridge loan, and you will never ask her to co-sign another legal document as long as you live. Patricia stared at the paperwork, her mouth parting in silent horror. You are divorcing us, she whispered, the reality of the term sinking into her bones. You are leaving us with nothing. I am leaving you with the exact lifestyle you can afford on your own merit, I countered. Thomas finally spoke, his voice a raspy whisper. And if we refuse to sign this waiver? If we refuse to just walk away? I leaned forward, resting my forearms on the mahogany table. I lowered my voice to a quiet, dangerous register. If you refuse to sign that waiver, I will instruct Declan to forward the informational police report regarding the forged wire transfers directly to the district attorney. I will press formal criminal charges for felony grand larceny. You will lose the estate to the auction block, and Thomas will face a very real, very public indictment. The threat hung in the quiet conference room, heavy and absolute. I was offering them a choice between legal independence or criminal prosecution. The Southern Belle facade crumbled entirely. Patricia broke down. The polished, unbothered exterior she had maintained for decades dissolved into raw, ugly tears. She covered her face with her hands, weeping with genuine panic. She was not crying for the loss of her eldest daughter. She was crying for the death of her safety net. She was mourning the realization that her personal automated teller machine was permanently closed, and the resulting financial ruin was entirely her own fault. Thomas looked at his weeping wife, then down at the contractual waiver. He lacked the spine to endure a criminal trial, and he lacked the character to defend his actions. He reached across the table, picked up a silver pen provided by Declan, and clicked the top. His hand trembled violently as he pressed the ballpoint to the signature line. He scrawled his name across the bottom of the page, surrendering his parental authority to save his own freedom. He handed the pen to Patricia. She took it with shaking fingers, her mascara running down her cheeks, staining her vintage designer dress. She signed her name through her tears, leaving a faint smudge of ink on the pristine paper. I watched them execute the documents with complete detachment. I felt no lingering guilt, no residual anger, and no sorrow. The internal conflict that had plagued me for my entire adult life was finally resolved. The transactional nature of their affection was neutralized by the ultimate transaction. Declan collected the signed contracts, applying his notary stamp to the pages. The loud thud of the stamp echoing in the room signaled the official conclusion of our business. I stood up, smoothed the front of my slate gray suit, and picked up my briefcase. I did not offer a parting sentiment. I did not say goodbye. I simply turned around and walked toward the heavy glass doors. I pushed through the exit and rode the elevator down to the ground floor. When I stepped out of the commercial building and onto the bustling downtown sidewalk, the bright Nashville sunlight washed over me. The humid air felt different today. It did not feel suffocating or oppressive. It felt warm, carrying the distinct scent of a city moving forward. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the atmosphere of my newly secured freedom. I was entirely unburdened, leaving them to navigate the impending disaster of Savannah's downgraded wedding day on their own. The second Saturday in October was originally scheduled to be the crowning achievement of my mother's social career. For over a year, Savannah had boasted about her autumn nuptials, predicting an event that would rival a royal coronation. She had promised the Belmead Registry a sprawling twilight ceremony under the ancient weeping willows of the Magnolia estate, followed by a caviar reception. I spent that exact afternoon lying face down on a heated massage table inside a 5-star wellness retreat in downtown Nashville. The air in the private spa suite smelled of crushed lavender and eucalyptus steam. Soft instrumental music filtered through hidden speakers, masking the noise of the bustling city streets outside. A licensed therapist worked out the deep knots of tension in my shoulders using smooth basalt stones pulled straight from a warming bath. I had booked their most exclusive full-day package. The total cost of the treatments, the champagne, and the private cabana equaled a mere fraction of the monthly auto draft I used to bleed for my sister's vanity. Spending my hard-earned income on my own peace felt like breathing pure oxygen for the very first time. I did not attend the wedding. I did not send a regret card. My absence was a verified fact established the moment the ink dried on the legal severance documents in Declan's office. However, skipping the ceremony did not shield me from the live broadcast. My phone rested on a teakwood side table next to a crystal glass of cucumber water. The screen illuminated every few minutes, buzzing with incoming text messages. The updates were provided by Lauren, a former high school classmate who thrived on the bitter currency of local gossip. Lauren was a peripheral friend to Savannah, possessing just enough social standing to secure an invitation, but harboring enough hidden envy to thoroughly enjoy the spectacle of a ruined dynasty. Lauren treated her text thread like a front-row seat to a theatrical disaster. I picked up the device and scrolled through the incoming gallery of photographs. The promised spectacle at the Magnolia estate had evaporated. Thomas and Patricia had forfeited the stolen deposit weeks ago. Confronted with the immediate threat of foreclosure and the steep retainers required to secure a bankruptcy attorney, my parents were forced to liquidate any remaining flexible capital. Chase also required urgent legal representation to handle the formidable corporate harassment warning issued by my bank. The wedding budget was devoured by desperate legal fees. The new venue was a municipal recreation pavilion situated in a public park on the outskirts of the city. Lauren's first photograph captured the stark reality of the downgrade. The autumn afternoon was unseasonably humid, casting a sticky, uncomfortable haze over the park. White plastic folding chairs were arranged in crooked rows across a patch of uneven grass. The legs of the chairs were visibly sinking into the damp soil. In the background, a family of strangers was having a casual picnic, totally oblivious to the sacred vows taking place 50 yards away. The guest list had suffered a profound reduction. The bridal shower humiliation had served as a fatal blow to Savannah's social credibility. The prominent surgeons, the real estate developers, and the country club board members all conveniently discovered prior scheduling conflicts. The attendance was limited to a handful of bewildered extended relatives and a few bridesmaids who looked entirely miserable standing in the humidity wearing heavy satin gowns. I swiped to the next image. The catering arrangement was a visual tragedy. Instead of the promised artisanal stations and imported champagne, the reception featured a sad buffet arranged on a wooden picnic table. Aluminum trays held assorted deli sandwiches curling slightly at the edges under the afternoon sun. Stacks of generic paper plates sat next to a plastic tub filled with melting ice and canned sodas. The contrast between the towering arrogance my family projected all summer and this bleak, impoverished reality was breathtaking. I sipped my water, feeling a profound, unshakable satisfaction. They were finally reaping the exact harvest they had planted. Lauren sent a lengthy paragraph detailing my mother's frantic attempts at damage control. Patricia spent the entire afternoon intercepting the few remaining guests, offering transparent excuses with a brittle, wavering smile. She cornered Lauren's mother near the sandwich table, insisting that Savannah had suddenly developed a deep passion for minimalist, eco-friendly living. Patricia claimed they intentionally canceled the plantation venue to donate the excess budget to environmental charities. Nobody believed a single word. The Bellmead elite possessed a razor-sharp instinct for detecting financial ruin. They smiled politely at Patricia while silently evaluating the cheap fabric of the table linens and the distinct lack of a hired waitstaff. My mother was performing a desperate, agonizing dance on the grave of her own reputation, attempting to sweep a mountain of debt under a thin paper napkin. But the true climax of the afternoon occurred during the traditional first dance. Lauren sent a short video clip capturing the newly married couple stepping onto the concrete floor of the pavilion. Savannah wore a heavily beaded cathedral-length gown, a dress designed for a grand ballroom with polished marble floors. Out here in the municipal park, the heavy train dragged across the rough concrete, collecting dirt, dead leaves, and discarded grass clippings. Chase wore a rented suit that fit poorly around his shoulders. He no longer projected the aura of a billionaire venture capitalist. The legal threats and the suspended business licenses had stripped away his arrogant smirk, leaving behind a grim, resentful grimace. They did not gaze into each other's eyes with profound romantic devotion. As a generic pop song played from a portable Bluetooth speaker placed in the corner of the pavilion, Savannah and Chase engaged in a bitter, whispered argument. The video captured the micro-tension perfectly. Savannah's jaw was clenched tight, her teeth bared in a furious whisper. She jerked her hand away from his shoulder, pointing an angry, accusatory finger toward the sad buffet table. Chase glared down at her, shaking his head, and muttering a harsh response that made her flinch. They were swaying to the music, but their body language screamed of toxic resentment. Lauren sent a follow-up text confirming the nature of their dispute. They were fighting about money. Savannah had just discovered that Chase maxed out a high-interest credit card to pay for his groomsmen gifts, leaving them with insufficient funds to cover their upcoming apartment lease. The crushing reality of their new, impoverished marriage was setting in before the sun even dipped below the horizon. They were legally bound to one another now. Two fraudulent entities drowning in a sea of toxic debt, stripped of their safety net, and forced to face the consequences of their mutual delusions. Savannah had married a financial parasite, and Chase had married a woman whose entire identity was tied to a status she could no longer afford. They were going to spend the next decade suffocating under the weight of deficiency balances and collection notices. I locked my phone screen, placing it back on the teakwood table. I closed my eyes and let the warmth of the spa suite sink into my skin. The pursuit of a flawless image had guaranteed their public humiliation and ruin. My mother sacrificed her oldest daughter to maintain a facade, and in the end, she lost both the daughter and the facade. I took a deep, cleansing breath. The spa therapist returned, offering a warm, infused towel. I accepted it, pressing the soothing fabric against my face. The toxic chapter of my life was officially closed. I was ready to step out of the shadows and embrace a future built entirely on my own terms, setting the stage for one final, undeniable glimpse of the empire they had squandered. 6 months passed, carrying the humid Tennessee summer into a crisp, forgiving autumn, and eventually yielding to the gentle thaw of a new spring. April arrived in Nashville, bringing blooming dogwoods and a quiet, profound stability to my daily routine. For half a year, my phone had not buzzed with a single frantic demand. The silence from the Bellmead estate was absolute, a void I gladly filled with professional momentum and personal peace. I sat in a spacious corner office on the 24th floor of the corporate headquarters. The heavy brass plaque mounted on my mahogany door displayed my new title, Director of Commercial Lending. The promotion had been finalized in February, accompanied by a compensation package that reflected the exact value of my meticulous nature. I opened my personal banking application on my encrypted tablet. The digital interface rendered a flawless credit profile. The $15,000 stolen from my legacy savings account had been replenished entirely through my own performance bonuses. The financial fortress Declan and I had constructed around my identity remained impenetrable. I was an island of solvency. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I locked my workstation, gathered my leather briefcase, and took the private executive elevator down to the subterranean parking garage. I unlocked my charcoal sedan. It was the exact same sensible vehicle my mother had mocked in front of the country club elite just months prior. Back then, she used it as a prop to highlight my supposed lack of ambition. Today, the reliable engine hummed to life, representing my unyielding independence. I navigated the winding concrete ramps and merged into the bustling downtown traffic, heading south toward the wealthy suburban enclaves. I was not traveling to visit family. I was finalizing a lucrative transaction. 3 years ago, I had quietly purchased a modest duplex on the outskirts of the city. The real estate market was currently peaking, and I was scheduled to meet a closing attorney to liquidate the asset, securing a heavy return to diversify my investment portfolio. The route to the title office required me to drive directly through my old neighborhood. The transition from the commercial highway to the manicured streets of the country club district always felt like crossing an invisible, heavily guarded border. The sprawling estates sat behind wrought iron gates, shielded by ancient oak trees and pristine brick retaining walls. The culture here remained unchanged. It was a high-pressure ecosystem demanding constant, exhausting public displays of success. I rolled my window down, letting the cool spring breeze circulate through the cabin of my car. I felt immune to the social gravity of the zip code. I turned the steering wheel, guiding my sedan onto the familiar tree-lined avenue where my parents resided. As their colonial brick house came into view, the physical manifestation of their financial collapse was startling. The property stood out like a rotting tooth in a perfect smile. The estate had always been Patricia's pristine temple, but the funds required to maintain the illusion were clearly exhausted. The once immaculate lawn was severely overgrown, the tall grass choked with resilient weeds. The sculpted hedges were wild and untamed, their branches scraping against the first-floor windows. The white paint on the grand front columns was peeling in long, ugly strips. The private landscaping crew had obviously been dismissed months ago due to unpaid invoices. Planted haphazardly near the tarnished brass mailbox was a cheap, flimsy plastic sign, "For sale by owner." The bright red lettering was already fading under the sun. The mortgage servicer had undoubtedly initiated the final stages of foreclosure. Thomas was making a desperate, futile attempt to offload the crumbling property before the auction gavel fell. Bypassing a licensed real estate broker was a glaring admission that they could not afford standard commission fees. In this hyper-competitive neighborhood, a homemade yard sign was the ultimate declaration of bankruptcy. I eased my foot off the accelerator, letting my sedan coast slowly past the front gate. My eyes drifted toward the center of the sweeping circular driveway, the exact spot where Savannah's gleaming alpine white luxury vehicle once sat was now occupied by a harsh dose of reality. Parked on the cracked concrete was a 15-year-old compact car. The paint was heavily oxidized, fading from a dark blue to a dull, chalky gray. The passenger side door was a mismatched shade of dark green, clearly sourced from a salvage yard to replace a damaged panel. The rear bumper was secured to the frame with a long strip of silver duct tape. This was Savannah's new reality. The catastrophic deficiency balance from the repossessed status symbol had annihilated her credit score. No reputable dealership would approve her for a standard lease. No financial institution would extend her a basic auto loan. Her new husband possessed a defunct business license and a mountain of vendor judgments. Stripped of her fraudulent prestige and saddled with toxic debt, Savannah was forced to navigate the wealthy streets of Nashville in a rusting relic that loudly broadcasted her financial ruin. Her relentless pursuit of a flawless aesthetic had guaranteed her a future of grinding poverty. As I coasted forward, the heavy oak front door of the colonial house opened. Patricia stepped out onto the porch. She wore a faded beige robe, her posture hunched and defeated. She lacked the rigid, practiced Southern grace she used to weaponize at neighborhood barbecues. She walked down the uneven brick path to retrieve the afternoon mail, keeping her head lowered. Just as she reached the curb, a sleek black Mercedes approached from the opposite direction. I recognized the driver of the Mercedes instantly. It was a prominent country club board member, a woman who used to drink sweet tea on Patricia's patio and applaud her parenting skills. As the luxury vehicle rolled past the estate, the driver slowed down. Her eyes locked onto the overgrown lawn, the cheap hardware store sign, and the rusted compact car staining the driveway. Patricia froze on the sidewalk. She recognized the vehicle. The socialite in the Mercedes did not wave. She did not offer a polite, sympathetic smile. She simply stared through the tinted glass, her expression reflecting a mixture of deep pity and profound disgust, before she pressed the gas pedal and accelerated away. Patricia shrank inward. She pulled the lapels of her faded robe tight against her chest, turning her head away quickly, desperately avoiding eye contact with the very people she had sacrificed my savings to impress. The vanity of the Southern high society had finally consumed the Williams family, chewing up their stolen resources and spitting them out into total isolation. They were left with nothing but the crushing debts they accrued, trying to dazzle a community that now actively shunned them. I watched my mother hurry back up the brick walkway, her head bowed in profound shame. A fleeting impulse crossed my mind. I could press the brake pedal. I could lower my window and force her to acknowledge my presence. I could showcase my tailored designer suit, my reliable transportation, and the sheer success I had built without her conditional approval. I could easily stop and gloat over the smoking rubble of her empire. I kept my foot hovering over the accelerator. True power is the profound absence of a need to prove anything to anyone. Stopping would require me to engage with ghosts. I did not tap the horn. I did not slow down. I simply drove past the decaying colonial house, my tires humming, a steady, peaceful rhythm against the smooth asphalt. The rearview mirror reflected the crumbling estate for a few brief seconds before the road curved, erasing the property from my line of sight forever. I accelerated toward the highway interchange, leaving the suffocating enclave of Belmead in my wake. I turned the radio dial, adjusting the volume to a soft acoustic melody. The sky ahead was a brilliant cloudless blue. My portfolio was expanding. My career was thriving. My mind was quiet. I navigated the long circular on-ramp, merging seamlessly into the fast lane, driving forward into a secure, independent, and incredibly peaceful life. There is a profound, echoing silence that settles over a family when the currency of their affection finally runs out. When the heavy-duty tow truck backed into that luxury apartment complex and hauled away a pristine, alpine white BMW, it was not merely repossessing a depreciating metal asset. It was towing away the fragile, meticulously curated facade of a traditional American family. The story of Fiona Savannah and the crumbling Belmead estate is a mirror held up to the quiet rot that occurs when a family replaces its foundational pillars, honesty, fairness, and emotional awareness, with the hollow, insatiable pursuit of social prestige. As we watch a rusty, mismatched compact car leak oil onto a driveway that once hosted elite country club galas, we are forced to pause and ask ourselves a terrifying question. What are we truly teaching our children in the shadow of the American dream? For generations, traditional American culture has placed a massive premium on outward, visible success. We are a society that often measures a family's triumph by the zip code of their residence, the crest embroidered on their private school blazers, and the luxury hood ornaments parked in their driveways. But when parents conflate providing an image with providing love, they construct a gilded cage that eventually suffocates everyone inside. The tragedy of the Williams family is rooted in a profound systemic parental failure, the weaponization of favoritism, and the absolute denial of emotional reality. In traditional family structures, there is often a quiet, toxic expectation that the strong, capable child will endlessly subsidize the favored, fragile one. Parents mistakenly believe they are expressing love and protecting their golden child by shielding them from the harsh consequences of their own actions. By financing Savannah's delusions and quietly cannibalizing Fiona's teenage savings to buy their youngest daughter a stage, Patricia and Thomas did not secure her future. They crippled her. They robbed her of the necessary friction required to build genuine character, leaving her utterly defenseless when reality finally demanded payment. Parenting is not a public relations campaign. The highest responsibility of a mother or father is not to curate a flawless family portrait for the neighbors, but to cultivate deep emotional awareness, unyielding fairness, and rigorous honesty within the walls of their own home. It requires the immense courage to say no to a child you adore, to teach them that consumer debt is a chain, and to instill the understanding that true status cannot be leased. When parents treat love as a ledger, extracting resources from the responsible child to fund the vanity of the entitled one, they do not just lose a bank account, they lose a daughter. They lose the very soul of the family ecosystem. For the young adults navigating the heavy, often suffocating expectations of their own families, Fiona's journey offers a stark, liberating revelation. Filial piety does not require financial or emotional martyrdom. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire simply to keep your family's illusions warm. We are culturally conditioned to believe that maintaining the family unit at all costs is the ultimate virtue. We are taught to swallow our discomfort, to open our wallets, and to absorb the administrative friction of our siblings' lives to keep the peace. But Fiona teaches us that when a family system is built on exploitation, the most moral action you can take is to step out of the equation entirely. Young people must learn to recognize the vital difference between supporting a loved one through a genuine, unforeseeable crisis and enabling a toxic pattern of entitlement. True wealth is not the balance in your stock portfolio. It is the absolute sovereignty of your personal boundaries. It takes immense emotional resilience to look at the people who gave you life and realize that their conditional affection is a price you can no longer afford to pay. By severing the financial tether, Fiona did not just protect her credit score. She reclaimed her dignity, proving that true independence is the only currency that genuinely belongs to you. If we step back and view this tragedy through the lens of a spiritual practitioner, someone walking the path of inner cultivation and self-correction, the collapse of the Belle Meade estate serves as a masterclass in the universal laws of cause and effect. Modern society seduces us into looking outward for validation, chaining our self-worth to the fleeting opinions of passing strangers. But true elevation of the human spirit requires us to look inward. To navigate the treacherous waters of modern materialism and cultivate a genuinely good life, we must actively develop three vital pillars: wisdom, morality, and willpower. Wisdom is the piercing clarity to see through the seductive mirage of material wealth and social standing. Fiona possessed the wisdom to recognize that a luxury car bought with stolen savings is not a symbol of success. It is a monument to spiritual poverty. She saw the deep sickness in her mother's vanity and chose not to let it infect her own soul. Wisdom is understanding that true abundance is found in a quiet mind, not a loud driveway. Morality in this context is not about blind obedience or turning the other cheek to chronic abuse. True morality requires the fierce, unyielding integrity to stop participating in a lie. By refusing to fund her sister's fraudulent lifestyle and demanding legal accountability, Fiona practiced a higher form of ethics. She refused to be an accomplice to her family's self-destruction, choosing the painful truth over a comfortable falsehood. To live an ethical life is to ensure your actions align with reality, stripping away the deceit that harms both the self and others. Willpower is the resilience to enforce a boundary when the entire world and your own flesh and blood is screaming at you to conform. Willpower is what kept Fiona's foot hovering over the accelerator as she drove past her crumbling childhood home. She did not stop to gloat, nor did she surrender to the old impulse to rescue them. She simply kept driving. To heal ourselves and build a better life, we must possess the quiet strength to let the dead branches of our lives fall away without looking back. We all have a rusted car parked in the driveway of our past, a consequence we either faced or avoided, a boundary we either drew with permanent ink or erased out of guilt. If this journey of reclaiming one's life from the shadows of familial expectation resonated with you, if you have ever had to become the villain in someone else's story to become the hero of your own, you are not alone. Follow Mourning Revenge for more stories of quiet strength where the invisible pillars of the family finally find their voice and rewrite the narrative. As we leave Fiona driving toward a bright, unburdened horizon, we are left to confront an uncomfortable truth about love, loyalty, and the families we are born into. We are taught from childhood that to love someone is to hold on to them fiercely, to catch them every time they fall, and to shield them from the cold, unforgiving realities of the world. Yet the ledger of human experience tells a radically different story. Sometimes the most profound act of love you can offer a person is not a rescue. It is a ruin. By stepping entirely out of the way and allowing the people you love to hit the concrete of their own consequences, you give them the only gift that actually matters, the agonizing, beautiful opportunity to finally build something real. The ultimate tragedy of the traditional family is not that we abandon each other. It is that we so often destroy each other by simply refusing to let go.